Man takes his dog for a walk before events take a seriously dark turn. All it takes is 5 words to make any dog go ballistic. Wanna go for a walk? Before you even finish the question, your pup is practically out the door, tail wagging like mad and nose primed for all the sniffing it can handle. But what dog wouldn't be excited about a chance to stretch their legs? After all, what's the worst thing that could happen on a quick stroll through the neighborhood? Long Island man Jim Devani thought as much when he began his usual jog around the block, with his 6-year-old lab Carson bounding alongside him. It was a walk like any other, a perfect day, until one wrong move turned the leisurely stroll into a deadly race against the clock. Jim never expected the day would unfold like it did, as he and his pup crossed from their Wading River home to the greenspace alongside the Great Rock Golf Course's 18th fairway. It was a cool December day, though Carson was more than ready for some much-needed exercise. Having just celebrated his 6th birthday, the young lab had been munching on all the celebratory cold cuts he could handle. With his belly full, it was time for Carson to stretch his legs on his usual walking route. But as the pair approached the edge of the golf course's pond, Jim felt Carson fall out of the stride with him. Believing the curious pup was simply sniffing around, Jim thought nothing of it until... Splash! Carson slipped down the leaf-covered edge, sliding headfirst into the water. Jim looked on, expecting his water-loving dog to turn the pond into his own personal swimming pool. Then his heart sank. Instead of swimming, the frightened dog began backing out of the water and straight toward an 18-inch runoff tube. Jim called after Carson, desperate to get his attention, but it was too late. Carson had squeezed himself inside the drain pipe. I kind of panicked at first, Jim told the Riverhead News Review. I ran down and jumped into the water to see if I could get him. By that point, he was already in the pipe and backing up even farther. Jim raced home to get his 16-year-old son Jimmy, who brought 2 friends along with him to help rescue Carson. Yet to the group's horror, they returned to find that the terrified dog had backed himself another 20-30 feet inside the pipe. At this point, Jim could barely see or even hear Carson. Jimmy offered to crawl in after the dog and pull him out, but Jim, unwilling to risk his son's safety, told him to make a call instead. That call was answered by Fire Chief Anthony Bitalvo. Thought he and his firefighters were busy escorting Santa through the community for their annual Stuff a Bus food drive, but slight ride-in with Saint Nick would have to wait. Carson needed their help. More than a dozen firefighters and EMS personnel arrived on the scene, bringing heavy rescue trucks, fire engines, and other support vehicles with them. The rescue promised to be an intensive one. Time, unfortunately, wasn't on their side. Carson was still wet from his fall in the pond, and with each passing minute, the air temperatures was dropping closer and closer to freezing. If they didn't get the poor push out of the pipe fast, hypothermia was a very real possibility. We determined that it was going to be a pretty intense kind of situation to try to get the dog out, explained First Assistant Chief Brandon Heller. The dog was basically 4 feet underground in a drainage pipe that started 50 feet from the entrance. With the clock ticking, the first responders sank a vertical vent pipe into the ground in an attempt to pinpoint Carson's location. They strained their ears for the sound of the desperate dog, though it wasn't until an EMS dropped some treats down the pipe that they finally got something. We could hear him crying and whimpering, Jim recalled. He just couldn't move forward as much as we called him. We knew he was okay, but he was just stuck in there. The rescuers began digging, quickly reaching the drain pipe below and preparing a saw to slice off the top section. However, a collective fear gave the first responders pause. What if the sound of the saw scared Carson further into the pipe? Seeing no other option, the workers cut the pipe open, dirt and debris cascading down into the murky darkness below. They peered inside, seeing nothing in the pitch black until a tiny head emerged to greet them. Jim ran to the hole, and with Jimmy's help they finally managed to free Carson and coax the shivering pup from his place underground. Everyone was relieved, and while he'd been terrified just moments before, the sight of so many new friends got Carson wagging up a storm. He's a lab full of energy and just always happy to see people, Jim laughed. When he got out of the pipe and he was surrounded by 30 or so people, he was just super excited. Though a little shaken by the experience, Carson was back to his rambunctious ways the very next day, something Jim was thankful to see. The end result is he got a bath out of it and got to meet a whole bunch of new people, he joked. Jim also made sure to thank the first responders for their tireless efforts.